Welcome to Valley Forge National Historical Park. Let's go check out some history. Hey guys, how's it going? Sorry it's been so long since we published any content. We haven't really been traveling much. We've been in the US, but the other day I decided to get in the car and drive to a little town called Valley Forge, where there's a national historical park, and it's the site of a pretty important event in the American Revolution, so the 1770s. Valley Forge is in the New England region, so close to the east coast of the United States, not far from New York and Philadelphia. It's an absolutely sprawling park. It's a good idea to drive, but you can definitely walk or bike around the park. As soon as you get there, it's a good idea to go to the visitor center, and there you can get some background information about this event before you go out and actually explore the park. Okay, so what is Valley Forge? What are we talking about? We're talking about a period from December 1777 to June 1778 that the Continental Army, that is to say what would become the American Army, was forced to hunker down and regroup, retrain, recover from a series of brutal defeats at the hands of the much superior British Army. The Continental Army had just been having its ass kicked for a couple of years, really since April 1777, when the battles of Lexington and Concord kicked off the American Revolution. It was just bad news for General Washington and the Continental Army in general. Things were looking pretty bad. Washington was dealing with problems with personnel retention. Enlistments back then were only a year. There was supply problems. Even before they came to Valley Forge, the troops were starving and having to forage the land, which is never good because that involves taking away from local civilians. That does not help your cause at all. In December 1777, which that year happened to be a brutal winter, there was a little ice age going on actually at that point. So not a great time to be outside. The Continental Army came here. 12,000 soldiers from a variety of different colonies, a variety of different militia groups united here under George Washington. Around 400 women and children, family members of these soldiers, stayed here. What did they do here? Well, they didn't fight, that's for sure. This was not a battlefield. They trained, they drilled. They did a lot of things that we would do nowadays. They conducted patrols. The British Army had just taken Philadelphia, which is not far from here. So they knew that the British Army was close. They conducted patrols. They had what we would identify as observation posts, OPs, around this area in order to detect any British attack. They were actually pretty active around here. They weren't just laying in their beds, dying of smallpox and freezing their heads off. Washington, what did he do? He petitioned Congress for more money. Congress didn't like the idea of giving money to an army. They thought that an army was an oppressive force, so they didn't want to give them money. Washington got them to spend more on the army. He coordinated with other Continental rebel groups as far away as Georgia and upstate New York, and he planned his strategy. He became a formidable politician here in Valley Forge. So that's a little bit about what Valley Forge really was. That's where the Continental troops drilled and trained under the tutelage of Prussian General Baron von Steuben. Behind me, the guy on the horse is Anthony Wayne. He was a general under Washington, and he was in charge of one of the big foraging parties that George Washington sent out during the encampment here. Foraging was a big part of life here. Remember, there was no Walmart back in those days. There was no Kroger or Whole Foods or whatever. You had to go out and live off the land. So one of the things that soldiers did here, apart from train and try not to die from disease or freezing cold temperatures, was to go out and find food, to forage. They had to live off the land. They had to sometimes take from the local population. And so that was definitely something that occupied a lot of their time. Now, taking a look in the other direction, we're looking down at flat countryside. So the elevated position of Valley Forge was one of the reasons why this place was chosen by George Washington. Also, a couple more things. It was really close to the city of Philadelphia. That had been the capital of the Continental Congress, and it had just fallen to the British. So the Continental Congress was in exile in the city of York, Pennsylvania, also not far from here. So this place is close enough for Washington to keep an eye on the Brits in Philadelphia, but not so close that they can sneak up on him. One thing about Valley Forge is that at the time that the colonial army was here, none of these trees were here because they had all been chopped down to build huts and to be used as firewood and other kind of practical applications for staying alive in the harsh winter climate. With 12,000 people encamped here, Valley Forge during the winter was the 4th largest city in North America. Diseases like smallpox and typhoid fever were pretty rampant. George Washington implemented a smallpox vaccine program. All in all, almost 2,000 troops would die of disease during their time at Valley Forge. That's more than any single battle of the Revolution. So Valley Forge actually killed more troops than any actual combat. So besides the historical elements here, what is the Valley Forge National Park? It's 10 miles of driving roads and 26 miles of hiking trails. There's some beautiful nature. If you love hiking, this is a great place to come. The area is really widely spread out, so a car is probably best. I've been driving, as you can see, between each of the different historical points, so it's a good idea to have a car if possible.
There, getting a lot of important information to run the war. He's not just in charge of this army, he's in charge of the army in, again, handrails, the real deal.
So what was the importance of Valley Forge? Why do we care? A bunch of guys got sick and cold, big whoop. Really, it was important because this is where the Continental Army was forged, where they became better trained and better prepared and stronger in order to take on and defeat the British Army, which they started doing as soon as they left in June 1778. So thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.